I'm Bella, and welcome to Nerdy Bell. I'm really bad at telling jokes. Like, I think that I'm kind of funny. I think I've got some pretty good one-liners and puns. But when I actually try to tell jokes, it doesn't go over well. I'm just not a good joke teller. So I'm gonna just destroy your lives with 3 jokes today. 3. Just need one hand for that. Okay, so first one up is my first favorite joke. It's called The Pink Potion. So this girl was online over the weekend and came across a phrase that she just didn't recognize. She tried Googling it but couldn't find anything. Like, it was like a pure Google whack type situation. So Monday, she's in school and she leans over to her friend and goes, "Hey, I got a question for you." And her friend goes, "Yeah, go ahead, ask." And she's like, "What's the pink potion?" Her friend freaks out. Is screaming like, "That's disgusting. Why would you ask me that? We're in school. Why would you ask me that in general anyways? You're sick." And she's like, okay, sorry. And the teacher comes over because obviously this has made a giant commotion. And the teacher is like, "Girls, what's wrong?" And her friend looks over and goes, "Ask her." Well, then the girl is like, "Well, I just asked a question." And the teacher was like, "What was your question?" And the girl's like, "What's the pink potion?" And the teacher freaks out. She's like, "How dare you say something like that to me? Get out of my classroom. I don't want to see you back here ever again. Go to the principal's office." And the girl is just astounded, like, oh my god, what could this question potentially be that's so bad? So she goes to the principal's office. Now, she's been in there a couple of times, but never for anything that's been in violation or being sent there because she misbehaved. It's basically just a, "Oh, well, your mom dropped something off, come pick it up," or a, "Congratulations, you got the scholarship." So she gets there and the principal's like, why are you here? You've never been here for anything like this before? What did you do?" And she's like, "I asked my friend a question, I asked the teacher a question." And the principal goes, "What was your question?" And she's like, "What's the pink potion?" He just stands up and leaves the room. About 30 minutes later, he comes back with 2 police officers. And they're like, "Miss, he wouldn't give us full details over the phone. What did you do?" She's like, "Well, first I asked my friend a question, I asked the teacher a question, I asked the principal a question." And they're like, "What was your question?" And she replies with, "What's the pink potion?" They tell her to stand up, and they cuff her. And they escort her out of the school and put her in their cruiser. And when they get to her house, her mom's outside gardening, and she turns around and sees a police cruiser stopping up not only outside of her house, but then seeing her teenage daughter being pulled out. And of course, she instantly starts freaking out. And the officers are just like, talk to her for a moment, and then they leave. And then she's like freaking out, like, "What did you do? What could you have possibly done?" And she's like, and the daughter replies with, "Well, first I asked my friend a question, I asked the teacher a question, I asked the principal a question, I asked the cops a question." And the mother's just like, "What was your question?" And the girl replies with, "What's the pink potion?" Her mom is just furious, and she's like, "You can go to your room until your father gets home." And the girl's just astounded, like, what have I possibly done that's that bad? So she goes up to her room, and she's just trying to figure out this giant mess. And then her dad comes up and is like, "What did you do? Your mom's freaking out in the kitchen. Like, I've never seen her this angry." And she replies with, "Well, first I asked my friend a question, I asked the teacher a question, I asked the principal a question, I asked my mom a question." And the dad's just like, "What was your question?" And she replies with, "What's the pink potion?" He instantly turns beet red, is furious. You can tell that he's trying not to scream. And he just replies with, "You can go to bed without dinner." So she's just at this point completely totally baffled and is like, I just don't know what I did wrong. So she decides to just go to bed because tomorrow can't be any worse than today. And when she wakes up, there's 2 men in the kitchen in black suits and are just very ominous. And they're like, "Miss, we need you to tell us what happened yesterday." And she's like, "Well, first I asked my friend a question, I asked the teacher a question, I asked the principal a question, I asked the cops a question, I asked my mom a question, I asked my dad a question." And they're like, "What was the question?" And she says, "What's the pink potion?" They tell her to just follow them, and they take her to a car, and then they take her to the airport because she's being deported. Whether that's legal or not is a completely totally different situation. So she's on the plane, and she's crying because what is she supposed to do being deported? And then she's sitting there crying, and the guy on the plane, like the passenger next to her, obviously is just trying to be a good Samaritan and goes, What's wrong?" And she's like, "Well, first I asked my friend a question, I asked the teacher a question, I asked my principal a question, I asked the cops a question, I asked my mom a question, I asked my dad a question, and then I asked the FBI agents a question." And he's like, "What was your question?" And she's like, "What's the pink potion?" he's instantly uncomfortable. He's doing one of those, like, don't talk to me type of, like, body postures, and is just trying to get far away from her as possible without actually leaving his chair. So the stewardess obviously sees this and comes over, and she's like, "Sir, what's wrong?" He's like, "It's her." And the stewardess is like, "Miss, what did you do?" And the girl replies with, "First I asked my friend a question, I asked the teacher a question, I asked the principal a question, I asked the cops a question, I asked my mom a question, I asked my dad a question, and then I asked the FBI agents a question, and I asked this guy a question." And the steward goes, "What was your question?" And the girl replies with, "What's the pink potion?" Like, at this point, she's getting to the point where it's like, she's just exasperated. She doesn't know if she should be asking this question anymore because it just seems to get her in more trouble. And the stewardess goes, "Oh, you're that passenger. Follow me." And the girl's like, "Oh, am I finally going to get an answer?" So they take her to almost the cockpit. And then the woman puts a backpack on her and says, "When you're about 500 feet up, pull the orange cord." And the girl's like, "The orange cord?" And then she gets shoved out of the plane. Because that's how physics works, right? And so then luckily she figures out that parachute before she, crashes into the earth. And when she lands, she's just looking around, trying to find somebody who speaks English and can understand her and that she can understand at the same time. And she finally finds somebody after like 2 hours of searching. And they're just like, "Child, why are you here?" And her response is, "Well, first I asked my friend a question, I asked the teacher a question, I asked the principal a question, I asked the cops a question, I asked my mom a question, I asked my dad a question, and I asked the FBI agents a question, and I asked the dude next to me on the plane a question, and I asked the stewardess a question." And he goes, "Well, what was your question?" And she's like, "What's the pink potion?" And he replies with, "You see that hut across the street? Go over there, and the guy in there can give you the answer." And she just is like so thrilled. She thanks him a million times over, and as she's crossing the street, she's hit by a bus. And that's the pink potion. Next up is one of my favorite pig jokes. So this guy who has never lived anywhere but in the city is driving to a conference. Now, he just got into a sports car, so he decided he was going to drive himself and decided he was going to take the back roads. Well, GPSs and Google Maps don't always work on back roads. So he gets lost, and he, at this point, is just can't turn back because he doesn't have enough gas to get back, but he's not sure he'll reach civilization before he runs out of gas. And he finally comes across a pig farm. Well, there's this pig on the side of the road that has a wooden leg. And he's just baffled, like, how does a pig get a wooden leg? Like, why wouldn't you either send it to the butcher or put it down, or why would you give a pig a prosthetic? So he eventually reaches the sign for this farm, and he pulls in. And naturally, this farm doesn't get a lot of traffic, especially not CEOs in sports cars. And so the farmer comes out and is like, "Why are you here?" And the guy and they go through the typical, "I lost my way, can you give me directions, do you got any spare gas?" And they get him sorted out, and then the CEO is like, "Well, before I leave, can you tell me about the pig with the wooden leg? Is he yours?" And the farmer's like, "Oh yeah, he's my pride and joy. Sometimes I prefer him over my children. Like, he is the best thing that's ever happened to this family." And the guy's like, "Well, what do you mean?" And the farmer replies with, "Well, we were out searching for truffles, but then he smelled an oil line, and we ended up digging, and it turns out there actually was oil, and we since then installed an oil pump, and this farm was on the brink of closing, but now we've over quadrupled our yearly income, and we're living beyond quite comfortably at this point because of this oil line." And the CEO was like, "That's absolutely amazing. That's like a 1 in a million chance." And the farmer's like, "Yeah, I know, but on a more personal note, while celebrating this discovery, I was drinking about a year ago, and I ended up passing out and knocking over a lamp. Well, the lamp caught fire to the curtains. This pig smelled the smoke, went in, woke up my family, and then came back and dragged me out. None of us would be alive without this pig." And the CEO is absolutely astounded, like, this pig is courageous. This pig is absolutely economically advantageous. Like, how could this pig get any better? So the guy can't help but ask, "So how do you get the wooden leg?" And the farmer replies with, "Well, you don't need a pig that amazing all at once." And now, my symphony joke. So, in one of Mozart's pieces, there's about 20 pages of rest for the basses. And nobody wants to count that out. As a bassist, I get frustrated at 16 measures, let alone 20 pages. And if you've ever played Mozart, it takes a while to get through 4, let alone 20 pages. And so the bassist decided that on the concert night, they're just going to slip out and go to the bar next door. Well, they get there, and they have about 2 or 3 drinks, and the guy, 2 of the 3 bassists are like, okay, well, we need to get back now. And the 3rd bassist is like, no, don't worry. I tied the conductor's score together, the pages of it together, so it's all good. And they're like, oh, okay, so we have time for one more drink. So they end up having the drink, and then they stumble back and get into their spots, and they're clearly, like, just smashed. Like, why they thought it'd be a good idea to go out drinking when they had 20 pages of rest, God only knows. Because, I mean, they intended to finish the symphony, but when you're drunk, that's going to be a little bit hard. Anyways, so they finish it, they get in there, and everybody's just kind of like, it's that weird moment where the basses are back, the show keeps going, but the audience obviously notice. So the one audience member leans over to his friend and goes like, hey. And his friend's like, what? And he's like, it's kind of funny. The friend's like, what do you mean? The guy replies with, it's the bottom of the 9th, the score is tied, and the bases are loaded. So that's all I have for you this week. See ya.